Hey everybody, it's Bridget Murphy with Koru K9 Dog Training. We're back again, and I'm really excited. Today we had a comment on one of our YouTube videos from a former client asking, my fur baby just came back from your board and train program. He was extremely timid and afraid at first. Now I can see much more confidence in him. I've been watching these videos to help further his training at home. We also have a much older dog that has not been through your program. I love your methods and how you take your time instead of rushing it. Do you have any videos out explaining how you start the training process? What do you do for dogs to warm up and feel comfortable with you? So that is what this video is about. And I'm really excited. Not only is it Ray and myself, but we have Damian, Shane, and Ashley. So we have 3 trainers to talk about 3 different perspectives on how we start our training process. Let's start there. So Ashley, since normally we have Damian and Shane, let's start with you. How do you start your training process with dogs?
So I think day one is pretty important for me. A lot of the times, dogs who have never been in this type of environment, it's very overwhelming for them. So I like to take the first day a little bit easy while also starting to implement a lot of rules and structure. A lot of behavioral issues that I've found, it's because the dog has way too much freedom. So, with that being said, obviously, if a dog doesn't know how to sit, I'm not going to sit there and force it, right? But little things like, you don't get to barge out of the crate, or if I open the back door and we're going to go potty, I'm going to wait until you settle down for a second, right? I'm going to start implementing these things slowly so that throughout the program we can build up to it. And when, you do know a sit stay, now we can do that at thresholds, right? And I also just like to take the dog into consideration. So I actually have 2 board and trains right now that find touch very aversive. They don't really want anything to do with me. We're still in that first week. So I'm gonna leave them alone because me trying to crowd them, trying to pet them, it's gonna make their behaviors worse, and they're not gonna learn to trust me or build that relationship with me. So as much as I want to play and pet you and have fun with you, I'm not gonna continue to stress you out with something that you clearly don't like. But then there are dogs who are a little bit more of a social butterfly, right? So I'm gonna start playing with them right away and start teaching them like, hey, like it's really rewarding to get to hang out with me and do things with me. And that way I can kind of set the tone across the board.
I love that, because what you are saying and what people should take away from this is we approach every dog where they are at. This isn't the one size fits all. Hey, I'm going to turn your dog back to you in 2 weeks and he's going to do all of these things. No, that's not realistic. Or maybe it is, but it's not going to be in the way that you want. So Damian, let's talk about how you start your training programs.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Ashley just said. Like day 1, day 2, the first couple of days, the dog's stressed, right? It's a new environment. They're not sure what's going on. So it's like, let them decompress. I'm not going to ask a lot from them, but I do totally agree. Like on day 1, when I take you potty, I'm not going to expect you to sit and hold that sit at the door for threshold manners, but you don't get to burst out the door either, right? We're going to start implementing some of that structure on day 1. And it's important that the dog is at least open to learning before we really start, asking or teaching new things to the dog. So what I mean by that is the dog has to be in a state of mind where it can learn something. It doesn't have to be like super confident, and we don't have to wait weeks and weeks, but it has to be a place where it's capable of learning. It's kind of out of the fight or flight mode that they kind of get into sometimes when they're first there, right? So it may take a day, and I've had dogs, that it takes 3, 4, 5 days to, depending on how shut down the dog is when they first get there. But something that I tell people is like clear direction. When you're unsure as a human, if we're unsure of something or we're nervous about something, it helps to have clear direction. So an example would be like, I have a little social anxiety. Like if I'm going to like a cookout, right, I feel a little stressed about it. I'm not gonna lie, right? When I get around a lot of people, I get a little social anxiety. But what really helps that if somebody lets me know what's going on. Hey, it's super casual, be there at 3 o'clock, and can you bring chips? I'm going to feel a lot better about that, because yeah, I'm unsure what I'm going into, but I got a little bit of direction, right? And that's how I feel with the dogs when they start to realize like, oh, I'm not sure what's going on, but if I just check in with this guy, he's got my back. That's where you can start building trust a little bit, early on. And so I think that's really important on the first couple of days.
I love that. And for the record, I hate big crowds of people too. So I get it. Shane, talk to me about how you start your programs.
Yeah, I mean, both Ashley and Damian touch on a lot of what I do, especially when a dog comes in when they're nervous. A big part of this too is I work on threshold manners. I work on the routine, like getting them used to the routine of what's happening here. I don't work on a lot of obedience stuff for the first couple days just because I want to get them acclimated. Start the routine of structure, to kind of fall into place with all the other dogs. And then, if the dog's not willing to take food, and we go a day without the dog not wanting food at all, we might try some existential feeding when it comes to those things just to jumpstart them. But structure is a big thing. It's just take your time with it. I think that's the big thing with this is if you go right into working the dog is going to come in a little bit nervous, even if they're a confident dog. You want to let them adjust and let them adjust on their own is best. If we, again, try to start working with them and overstimulating them, it's going to make the process of them settling and kicking into the routine a lot longer. So, that is the most important part of this. And that's part of the trust with these dogs is learning that trust with you and gaining that confidence with you, because we're ultimately the ones that have to transfer that to the humans. And if the dog doesn't trust us, you're going to fail that routine. So,
yeah. So it's interesting you brought that up, Shane, about food and feeding, because that's also part of your structure, right? I mean, there's structured, free lunch policy and how to work around food. Since we're kind of going this round circle, Ashley, could you explain to me a little bit about what it means to use the food around food and food and training? A lot of people think that dogs are starved, so they have to be starving to actually perform for you. And dogs are losing weight because of it and all that type of stuff. Could you explain to me what it really means to use food and variable food rewards?
Yeah, absolutely. So food is going to be one of your easiest ways to build a relationship with a dog. It's one of those resources that they need. And then also for the dogs that are super picky, I went through $50 bags of treats and they don't want to eat it. Well, okay. They can work for their food. They need that to survive. I don't want to get into this battle of like, I have to find, raw steak for you to eat on walks. So it's not necessarily starving dogs for a week. I'm not going to just keep the food bowl away, but we can get them into that state of learning, right? I'm going to have the food bowl on the counter, the dog in front of me. They make eye contact, I mark reward. If they don't want to eat in that moment, okay, like we can end it there, bring them back out in a little bit and keep trying that. But that way that they start to build that relationship with me of like, oh, I get everything that I need from this human. And then when they go home, it's the same thing. You're not getting free resources like food, like affection, all these things that we can really, leverage to build a better relationship and have more reliable obedience.
Yeah. So Damian, could you talk to me a little bit about, I guess, expectations of dogs and their weights? And what do we do when we take in a dog and monitor their weight, and then how that relates to the food training that we're doing?
Absolutely. So first things first, if a dog is overweight, underweight, confident or not, when they first come, they rarely want to eat the first day. You offer them the food and they're just too nervous to eat, right? That's very common. So first and foremost, that's almost every dog. But what's really important to remember when we talk about the no free lunch policy, it's not about withholding things. It's about teaching them the value of those things and working for those things. So for me, if I have a dog who doesn't want to take food, maybe it's overweight, maybe it is super picky, I start with like the restaurant style. The restaurant's open and then it's closed. So they still get offered that food, right? In the morning but they have a limited amount of time. They can eat, their full amount. They have 10 minutes and then I pick it up. It's not about getting them hungry because they have access to the same amount of food. It's about them understanding the value of the food and that I'm bringing that food to them. Eventually no dog will starve themselves, and we offer that food and they'll choose when they're ready to eat. Once that dog is willing to eat on the appropriate schedule, then I can start using that as rewards and things like that. And it's super important. Like, we may have nothing of value to that dog. And so to create a bond and a relationship that they're willing to, or so that they want to work for us, not have to work for us, we got to have something that they want. Our relationships with dogs are transactional. It doesn't mean that we don't love them and they don't love us, but we have something they want. That is why, our relationships are built. So we don't use the hunger, we use the desire for the food. to build the relationship. So again, like I offer that food. You have a chance to eat it. I'm just not leaving it in there, because if it's there, it's just always there. It's, of course I got it. There's no value in it. So I think that's what's really important. And the misconception about the no free lunch policy is that you're not offering the dog food. Is just, that's not the way we do it. And also, I'll be honest, a lot of dogs we get in are overweight. And so that they can go a few days without eating and be just fine. Like they choose to go a few days without eating because they've got extra weight on them. And so we just got to work through that. And I tell all my clients that, hey, almost every dog doesn't eat for the first few days. We weigh the dog when it comes in. We weigh them, a couple times a week or at least weekly. We keep them posted on that. And I always say, the dog will start to want to eat their food. And when they're willing to eat it, when I offer it, then we can start utilizing it as a reward. So the no free lunch policy is about building value in us, in our commands. Most dog trainers or a lot of dog trainers can get your dog to have to do what you want, but I don't want that. I want the dog to want to do what we ask of them. And to get that, we have to create value in us and in the resources, food and toys and things like that.
Yeah, Shane, I mean, when we're talking about a dog that's like really shut down or really nervous to begin with, and they first come to your place for training, I mean, in your experience, what is some of the, I guess, what are the tougher cases, and how long did it take the dog to come around to start to kind of warm up to you so you could actually start to address whatever problem behavior they're there for?
Yeah, I mean, we work with a lot of behavioral dogs, so it does happen, pretty often, I would say, for a lot of us. But I mean, worst case scenario, and keep in mind with all of everything I'm saying, like we are in contact with the owners. Like me, I'm very particular about it. So it's a daily thing for me, just letting them know, like, here's an update for you, especially if I have a dog that is not taking food. But like I've had a dog go a week without eating. Obviously daily I'm talking to the owner and letting them make decisions of what we're going to do, and I should say that when it gets to a certain point, but and it really depends on the dog's weight too, because again, like Damian said, I've had a lot of dogs come in that were overweight. And so, it's a little bit easier when we have that case, but I can specifically remember a Great Dane that was underweight when it came in and it was not eating. And it, that was probably the hardest case I've ever had. And there was existential feeding. There was nothing that worked for this dog to get him to eat besides for, it would just eat when it's hungry. And that was the only case I've ever had like that, but we worked through it and eventually got it to eat. A lot of existential feeding, a lot of engagement with this dog, got it. I mean, you just have to come up with crazy things to get the dog excited and engaged with you and bonded to you to feel comfortable with it. But even that case, that dog ate like maybe 3 times a week, and so, and I was when it was eating, I was loading it with I got special calorie stuff. I mean, the owner was sending me stuff left and right, but I mean, that was probably the hardest thing. But rarely does that happen. Usually 2 or 3 days will come in and a dog will get to a point where it's, ready to take food. You built that engagement with them and they have that trust with you, and it makes it easy from there.
Wow. And this was great because I love that you're bringing up a difficult case, especially with food and feeding. It's important for people to know that we're fully transparent with the clients and we do communicate. So all of this stuff, maybe you're seeing the front end, but in the back end, there's very clear transparency going on there. And if we feel that there's something detrimental to the dog, we will pull the dog, even if the owner doesn't want. We've done that before.
Yeah.
So Ashley, the other question that was asked is, what do you do for the dogs to warm up to you and feel comfortable? Do you have a couple suggestions? Like this owner in particular had an older dog at home that hadn't been through their program. So maybe we could just offer up some creative solutions on what do we do to get dogs to warm up to us?
Yeah, again, I think it goes back to the individual dog, right? Like, so the ones that come in and they don't want anything to do with me. Okay, like that's fine. You see all these videos that go viral online of like the feral puppy and they're getting backed into the corner by a rescuer and they're, doing this number and they're just petting them. It's a great way to get bit. It's a great way to keep, stressing that dog out, right? So I'm not going to do that. I might just set up like an X pen, out on my back patio where they're a little bit free. They can walk around, they can get away from me if they want to. And we're just going to sit there and nothing bad is going to happen. I'm not going to force any interactions. If you want to come up to me, you can. And then that way it's also on their terms. So they're starting to learn that they have some agency in this. And I'm not going to continue to stress them out. And then again, for like the dogs who are a little bit more social, but, might be a little bit hesitant. Again, like I do like to incorporate a lot of play into my training, especially, certain breeds that have a lot of prey drive. I'm going to get out a flirt pole or a tug, something like that that's engaging with me, not necessarily just throwing the ball and they're going to go, fetch or whatever. Things that are going to build with, engagement with me there.
I love that. It's the concept of building up, not tearing down, right? Like this is what we want to do. Damian, do you have any other creative ideas or suggestions for somebody maybe working with an older dog that's a little untrained?
Yeah, absolutely. So more than likely the older dog has a lot of access, has had a lot of access to things that he finds valuable, right? So we can't leverage that. So that's number one. Like we talk about balanced dog training, it's a lifestyle, right? We balance work and play and free time and structure. Most likely this dog has an imbalance and has a lot of free time and a lot of play without it balancing the structure and stuff. So the value of all those things go down. So we want to create value in that. Again, it's not about withholding. So I'll pull that toy, I'm going to pick the toys up and I'm going to pull that toy out and we're going to play. And then I'm going to end it when he's at his most excited, right? Like I want to create value in it. So a lot of times people let the dog choose when they engage with them early on to play, and then they let the dog kind of get bored with it. Well, the dog's going to come back out for that resource the same way it went in or it ended. So if you end it when it's most excited, the next time you pull that toy out, he's going to be like, heck yeah. So I think that's a really important part of it. Like if your dog has 100 toys laying around, it's going to be hard to use that toy as a reward because there's not a lot of value. So balancing that work and play and structure and free time has a purpose. And that is part of that is to create value in our reward. So I think that's a really important part of it. And to piggyback a little bit on what Ashley said about like, people pushing dogs too far early on, trying to like get close and pet them and stuff, that's all pressure. So you got this dog who's stressed and you're putting all this spatial and social pressure on the dog, which is making things worse, right? We think, that we're helping them, but all you're doing is pressuring them more. And I really liked her X pen idea. And I do a lot of that with like, you'll have fear aggressive dogs in a crate who maybe growl and bark. I'm just going to chill. I'll put my headphones on, listen to a podcast. I'm just going to literally sit next to that crate until the dog's like, hey, this isn't so bad, right? This guy's not pressuring me or stressing me. And then when I pull that dog out, I'm basically ignoring it. I'm going to make it wait, but I want the dog to get curious about me, like come up to me and be like, okay, who's this guy? What's he got for me? That's when I'll start to kind of, turn towards the dog and kind of put that spatial pressure on because the dog's coming towards me now. And so that's really important. I want the dog to want to engage with me. And so waiting for them to come to me. And if anyone's ever done in-home lessons and you sat down to do your, eval and the dog's like really interested in you kind of, or being, curious about you and you ignore that dog, it's not long before that dog's like, no, I want this guy's attention, right? Everybody always says, why does he come up to you? Never come. It's because I've ignored him. And he's like, well, who is this guy? So that's a good thing. Like let them choose to engage with you, and it may take some time to do so. But I think that's really important. And that's a really good point she brought up about kind of letting the dog, hey, you have some control in this. You kind of got a little bit of control on when the pressure is going to come towards you, and whether that's, leash, spatial, environmental, whatever pressure we're talking about.
That was so well put. Shane, do you do anything different to help establish trust or talk to us about, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, everything they said is spot on. The key terms is just less is more in the beginning. If you don't have trust with the dog, you're not going to get anywhere. And if you got to give the dog time and space to create some sort of relationship with the dog. And we have them for such a short amount of time. That's the problem. But the most important, part of training is the beginning, and that's going to make or break how long it's going to take. Because if you push it too fast and try to just get right into training and do stuff with them, you're creating way more time that this dog is going to need to create what you need to create with your obedience. And I think that's the most important thing is like you know, patience and less is more in the beginning, because they'll come around. It's just a matter of time. You know, even super reactive dogs, unless you have, you know, some severe cases, they come around. It's just a matter of time, but it just takes time. And I think that's the most important thing. And, you know, and that's through all realms of training, you know, whether you're doing competition obedience, basic obedience, advanced obedience, sport work, anything, you know, the more time you can put into it and the less pressure you put on a dog, the faster outcome you're going to have, even though your mind tells you, hey, I want to do this. I want to get this done. I want this dog to be to this point, but you're going to hurt yourself by trying to rush things. So.
Excellent point. Ashley.
Yeah, I actually wanted to piggyback off of both of everything that they've said. And I think, you know, sometimes the first week, right, when we send our update emails and we're not really working on obedience, right? And owners are like, hey, you know, I signed up for a 3-week board and train. Like, I need my dog to sit down, place, you know, heel on walks. And one thing I do want to stress is that, yeah, a dog could know obedience commands, but if we're not addressing that mental state, if we're not building value and trust in us, we're not going to get anywhere. You know, a dog can know all of these things, but it's going to be so much harder when it goes home to keep up with that if it doesn't want to work for things, if it doesn't have a good relationship with its owners. Like, these are all things that I would much rather take the time in the beginning to work on, because obedience I can train super quick, right? Especially if we lay that foundation. So that's why sometimes, you know, the first week, hey, I'm not working on sit with your dog. We're doing other things, but it's going to make such a big difference in the end.
It's so important. I don't think people understand how important that beginning foundation is. If you don't build that foundation properly, everything else will crumble. But Damian, you had something to add.
Yeah, just real quick, everything everybody's saying is just spot on. And I use the word that's really important, is advocacy. So if your dog doesn't trust that, if this dog doesn't trust that I'm going to keep them safe and not overdo it, then it doesn't matter, right? Like, I lost their trust. So what I mean by that is, if you're taking all this time to make sure you build a relationship and the dog's coming around slowly, and then, you know, you let a client dog run up to their fence or something, or run up to their crate, or you push them too close to another dog or that's reactive, and now all of a sudden the dog was like, I don't trust you anymore. Like, I was building that trust, but now you put me in a situation I can't be successful. Why would I trust you? So I think that mentality of like, I got your back. I'm going to train you. I'm going to maybe even pressure you in ways that are uncomfortable when we're ready to train, but you can trust that the situations I put you in are safe and that you're going to be successful. And so that type of mentality is really important. And that's why it takes a week sometimes just to get the dog to engage with us. And like Ashley said, the obedience side, if I have the trust and the desire to work and maybe a good way to reward the dog, that obedience is going to come super fast. So, you know, that is honestly on the back burner a lot of the times. Let's get the relationship where we need, and I want you to trust me, because I'm going to advocate for you, and you're never going to be put in a situation you cannot be successful in.
That literally gave me the chills. And I think a perfect way to end. That's how we train dogs. We build them up, we establish trust, we build engagement. And that's how we do it. So keep the comments coming. We want the questions that you have about our dog training program, or questions about your dog in particular in training. You know where to look us up, KoruK9.com, all the social platforms on Koru K9. In the meantime, we will see you again soon. Thank you, everybody.